Hello, Foxy listeners, and welcome to episode 169. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking with a really special lady who is going to be talking to us all about strategy. Now, we hear about this all the time, but strategy is actually her super skill. But what she's going to be talking to us is about how to understand what strategy is, how to use it, how to be not intimidated by it, and how it's all going to look easy. So let's dive in.
I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Hello, Foxy listeners. I'm really excited for you to join me today for today's guest. It was so funny. We were just talking about her name. And, if you forget it, she said that you could say Beyonce. So I'm happy to say that I have Beyonce on the show, but really it's Beate. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate being here.
So you have quite a sort of extensive resume of stuff that you've been able to accomplish. Having a global business that you ended up selling to Bill Gates. I mean, it's really great, all of this stuff that you have, and there's more to it. People will be able to read about it in the bio. But tell us about before that and how you started up.
Yeah, I think this is a really good starting point, because when you read the happy ending, it's going like, well, there's a woman who sold a business to Bill Gates. I'll never do that. That's just nuts.
That
right?
must be nice. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Good for her. But really, what it is, the story, and for all of your listeners, the story is really not very different than many other stories. The stories is that I just didn't fit in, and I felt that a lot of the stuff that is being talked about in career development and in corporations, and get a job and have job security, work your work, get vacation, and then retire and die, wasn't exactly my idea of what I had in mind for myself. And I could never understand why in the aptitude test that I took when I was 16, they tried to push me to be a secretary after the aptitude test that I should have been a roofer, of which I had no desire to be. And so when you go and you realize that a lot of these ideas are coming from the mindset of, let's look what is widely available, and then let's take you and force you into that. And I wasn't going to have any of that. So anybody who's here, I assume, feels somewhat in that same way. And then the journey starts. And the journey is not a princess story. The journey, I didn't wake up one day a princess and things did not get handed to me, and I didn't get a crown one day and nobody called me the queen thereafter. It was a bitter, hard, brutal fight as a single mom, an immigrant in a country that's not my own. I'm originally from Germany. I married an alcoholic, pathological liar. That was a pretty big wrench in my path. I got lied to, cheated. I've lost my business multiple times, had to rebuild it. Lawsuit, fires, floods, riots, earthquakes, September 11th, a tsunami on top of everything. Now I can add a pandemic to my ever-growing repertoire of disasters to overcome. And the story really is the story of audacity and persistence and courage and staying the course, because at the end of the day, Tanya, it comes down to one thing: I will not drown in a puddle.
Well, and I love your story because part of it too, I was listening to your YouTube channel, and you had an episode that you put out recently about, when you are kind of feeling stuck, or you're sort of in that frustration. And you had this great quote that really hit me, and it said, if it's possible for you. And it isn't can I, it's how can I, and about taking action. And I think that hits me with your story, because listening, learning about your story, you would kind of think like, God, how did you keep getting back up?
Truly, right? Yeah, I think that this is really the big mindset shift. Is the reality of it, Tanya, is that we are up against our program that's been instilled by the fears of our parents and their expertise and experience, and all the history and the DNA and the genetic stuff that's coming down our lineage. So we stand here and we go and we look at something, which is why we're entrepreneurs, and we say, that would be really nice to sell a business to Bill Gates. Not that I ever set out to do that. But you say, I'm here destined for something greater. And for me, this is, I think, really, really important to point out. And it dawned on me yesterday, as I'm working on new copy because I'm launching a bunch of new products and services. And so I'm like, how do I get this message clear? And then it dawned on me, there was this moment. So I come from photography, I have a photography background. I was a photography agent, and I was a still photography producer. I was producing for Mercedes-Benz, for BMW, Levi Strauss. I mean, great, great brands. I was like the hot go-to chick back in the days. And there was a day where I'm standing in the desert in a dry lake bed. I mean, it is drop dead gorgeous. And the landscape in this California, it doesn't get any better than this. And the motorhomes there's a crew of 20, the hair and makeup, the models, everybody's doing their stuff, and I'm standing there and I'm feeling deep inside my soul this voice, right, that says, you are destined for more. You can do way more. This is too small for you. And I was like, yeah, that's great, and I believe that, but I need to make money. I'm a single mom. This is what's happening right now. And then September 11th comes and wipes out my production business in a day, like out cold. So I had the voice that I was hearing years before that I didn't pay attention to. And then the day came where the decision to go bigger was taken away from me, because then it was all or nothing.
Right.
And that's what forced me into building the stock photography syndication that I turned into an international licensing business that licensed into 79 countries in the world. That made me the industry leader. That's what led to the sale of my business. So the idea about, what are you destined to be, scaling your impact, growing your authority, is also to listen to that voice, because if you feel that voice inside of yourself, and that tells you to do something and you don't do it, the decision often is being taken away from you, because guess what? God, universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is actually paying attention to your innermost desire and here to deliver.
So, and I think that this is so true, because I think oftentimes people get stuck, especially if they're looking to pivot slightly, and they go, I'm doing this. And like you had said, I'm making money at this. It seems silly for me to leave this to try and make something else work, when really you're kind of going, well, I don't love this, but it'll do.
Yes. And that I think is a fundamental decision. And going back to that quote. So now the question really is, what do you really believe in? At the end of the day, my dad always said, at the end of the day, before you go to bed, you're going to have to like and believe the person that looks back at you from the mirror, right? That is only you. There's nothing else. So you can bullshit anybody else. You can tell your mom, your dad, your partner, your kids, you can tell them whatever you want. But at the end of the day, when you look in the mirror, there is this moment of truth where you say, who am I really? And what do I really, truly believe that I'm capable of? And especially for women in sales, that is like the big hook. It's like, if I really believe that I'm valuable, if I really believe in what I do, if I really believe that I'm helping people, why would I not charge for it? Why would it be difficult for me to close the deal? Why would it be difficult for me to ask for the sale? Why would it be difficult for me to be in front of people? And so now you're adding all these puzzle pieces to it, and you're listening to the podcasts, and you're listening, you know, going to conferences, you're getting information, you absorbing it. And now the question is, are you going to be capable of doing that? And that's where I came up with that, where I said, well, if it exists, it's possible. So if I know one person who's done this, who's been a really successful woman in business, and we know there's many, so therefore it's possible. Now, if it's possible for them, that means it must be possible for me. I mean, it's just logic.
Mm-hmm.
And the story of Oprah isn't exactly a princess story either. I mean, that woman worked her way through the hardest things you can imagine. And then you go, it's like, well, so if it's possible for them, then it's possible for me. If it's possible for me, then all I have to shift is my why into how, right? And now I have a whole completely different mindset to say, so now that I have determined and made the decision that something bigger is possible for me, now I'm going to put the how out. How do I get from here to there? And this is the other part, Tanya, where I think that a lot of people really get stuck, where we believe that Mr. and Mrs. Control Freak, who are listening, you know exactly who you are, that you are in charge of every single step of the way. Well, I got news for you, because if I would have told you that in order for me to become a multimillionaire and sell my business to Bill Gates, I would have to go through all these disasters, and I would have to lose what I had multiple times over, which then forced me to go there, I would have declared you insane, because the story is kind of insane.
Yeah. You wouldn't sign up for that, looking at it and going,
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's so worth it. But
yeah, we're going to drag you through the mud for quite a few years, and then we'll give you a little bit at the end. Most people would be like, no, thank you.
Don't forget the frying pan,
yeah.
Right? And so, but now if you were to say, was it worth 10 hard years to be a multimillionaire in your early 40s, then everybody would say, yeah, of course it is. But you don't know that. So you have to detach yourself from the notion that the how is actually something you have control over. The only thing you're responsible for is to look for the opportunities. And the opportunities are often hidden as challenges, because it's not like the opportunities presented to you on a silver platter. I mean, you're about to give birth to something new. And I compare this, Tanya, to this idea that when you're pregnant and you're 9 months pregnant, I mean, you're so over being pregnant.
Yeah, I remember that.
You're so over it, and your body is just like every day. I mean, and there's water, and you're swollen, and you're hurting, and you have to go pee every 3 seconds, and you can't sleep. You wake up every 5 seconds. I mean, you're so uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable to give birth. Otherwise, you would like to be pregnant forever. And it's not then when the pain kicks in, and imagine this extraordinary pain to give birth, right? How intense that moment is. Only for you to forget how painful it was the minute you have that baby in your hands. I mean, just the psychology of this. So if you think about this as success the same way, that it's growing, at first it's kind of cute, you love the kicking, then you start to get the heartburn, then you get the indigestion, then you get all these other things, and you kind of feel gross, you can't fit your clothes anymore, you get bigger and bigger, now all these other problems are starting, now the pain hits you, and you go, Jesus, what is this thing that everybody is so fondly speaking about? And then you give birth, and it's brutal, and then you have this baby go like, oh, it's so worth it.
Yeah. That's so true. That's such a good analogy, because it's true. Like, and sometimes we do it multiple times, even though we know exactly what happened, right? We're like, yeah, let's do that again.
Masochist.
So I think, I want to talk a little bit about strategy, because I think another place that people get stuck is that, we're told all of these things that we need to do. And, in our heads, we're like, okay, we know, like, we have to find a strategy. We have to figure stuff out. But then you go, so what does that look like? And a lot of people go, strategy, like, just have a strategy. And then they get stuck. So can we talk a little bit more about what that actually is, and some sort of strategies that people can actually latch onto?
I love that. Yeah. It's interesting. You're absolutely correct. I hear this a lot of times myself, and then I look at it and like, and now what do you expect everybody to do? So it's really not that difficult. So I'll be happy to break this down. So there's a couple of things that, I built my 5-star success blueprint to help businesses diagnose where things are not aligned. And we'll talk about this if we have time in a minute, but I want to get back to the strategy piece. So there's really 3 pieces that you want to have control over in your business. Number 1 is the overall strategy. Number 2 are the systems, and number 3 is the authority piece, which includes the client attraction system. So the overall strategy of a business is where you want to go. I compare this to, again, there is no one size fits all strategy. So when somebody comes to me, the first question is, I say, what do you want? Then they say, I want to be successful, and I want to be able to feed my family. I want to go on nice vacations. I want to buy a new car. I want to, move to a better neighborhood with a better school system, things that I want to spend more free time with my family. Then we need to look at, what does this business model actually look like? So the first strategy is, what's the business model? So the business model could be that you say, I'm a mom with 3 small children. I can't really travel. So speaking on stages and traveling then is off the table for you, because that's not a strategy for you. But podcast guesting might be a strategy for you to get your message out, right? So we just take note of, what can you do and what do you want to do? You also need to make sure that the free time part is part of your overall business model, which, by the way, everybody forgets all the time, is that to say, the idea is not to work toward it. The idea is to plan for it and then achieve it, right? So you don't keep pushing it off. So the first strategy is the clarity of, where do I even want to go? Sometimes you want a lifestyle business. Sometimes you want a laptop business. Sometimes you want a equity business. You might want a business that you can sell, that like me, that has to be set up completely different. So the first strategy is the clarity of, where do I even want to go, because that drives everything else. Then you look at that overall strategy of where we want to go, and you say, now what are my sub strategies that are going to get me there? And there's hundreds and hundreds of strategies. So there is a strategy for client attraction. So how do you get your message out? How do you build that authority? One strategy, as we talked about, could be podcast guesting. One strategy is podcast hosting. One strategy is speaking. One strategy is networking. One strategy is going to conferences. One strategy would be to do a LinkedIn outreach piece. One strategy is an Instagram instant authority piece, which we teach. And we do a LinkedIn strategy. So we have a whole mastermind for podcast hosts, because I've realized how many podcast hosts do this to build their authority and build their business, but then don't take any action.
Well, you forget. I think it's true. I think even just recently, I, was sitting there and I was like, okay, I was doing something. I wanted to get the word out, and I was like trying to think of a list, and I don't know why it never dawned on me. I was like, I have over 90 guests that I've interviewed. Why am I not telling them what I'm doing? But it just never dawned on me.
Exactly. So the strategy, now to really get to the meat of it, is that you're not in business to be a celebrity, and you're not in business to be liked. You're in business to perform a service or sell a product to somebody who needs it, and to help them to live a better life, get better, have a better experience, be more successful for whatever that purpose is you're in it for. And a lot of times we get, especially with the social media idea of going viral, it is so bad for business, because the only thing that really ever goes viral is a really cute cat that does something really cute, or a Karen in a park yelling at some poor person. These things kind of go viral. That's all going viral for the wrong reason. If you look at people in business, even Gary Vee doesn't technically go viral, right? I mean, he's built this up over years with a team of 20 that do nothing other than flood the internet with social media messages. That's not a strategy for most of us. That's not what we do. What we do has to be extremely deliberate, because you don't have, if you have extra time, spend it with your loved ones, go to the gym, take care of yourself. So the strategy has to be reverse engineered based upon the goal you want to achieve. So for example, were I now to, work with a mother that has, that's newly divorced, that's a single mom, one of my clients, Terry. And she was doing sales training for med spas. The problem with that was that they wanted her to go and fly across the country to the different med spas, train the front desk staff, and all these types of things. So we knew we had to get her to a point where we could do some sort of online program. And then it dawned on her that she was going to actually write an entire software as a solution, a program, a SaaS. And now she can service people by going and buying into that program, and she's making multiple six figures. So we had a strategy of where we want to go. We looked at who she was, and then we reversed engineered the pieces of the strategy to get her there. So that's really how strategy works. Once you have the strategy in place, you build the system that drives the strategy. So I have a team that does my LinkedIn outreach strategy. And my LinkedIn outreach strategy is a executive roundtable, because why ask for a place at the table if I can own the table? So I have a whole system that I've built where there's an outreach message, a connection message, a first message, a second message, a third message, then there's a roundtable, there's a follow-up. So now you're building the system so you can teach a VA on how to then multiply that. And so when I built this mastermind idea for podcast hosts, Tanya, I realized that one of the biggest issues I see is that business owners are trying to find an assistant. And then this assistant, they hope this assistant comes with some sort of a system, but the assistant isn't coming with a system. They're here to help you to work in your system. So if you don't have a system, it cannot work. So you have to first build the system, and then you can train the assistant on the system, and then they can succeed. So now we are adding in what we offer to our clients, not just the information, we give them the actual workflow. So now and then we train their VA so that we can hand over this whole model and saying, here's your Instagram system, here's your LinkedIn system, here's your executive roundtable piece, here is your client attraction piece, and we customize it so that the strategy of what works for me from all the many different strategies you have now fits your personality type, what you like to do, and achieves the kind of outcome. So ask me more questions for strategy if you feel that we need to go deeper into anything. I'm here to help.
No, I think that's great, because I think that is an issue that a lot of, especially when people are starting to look for help and they hire, virtual assistant, because it's starting to get more popular, and they think that this person's going to be able to come in and fix everything, not realizing that they're just there to assist. They forget the assist part in that you have to have everything. So I like that, but I like that what you're saying is that, someone like you can help them to build that, because they might be stuck or not know, how to go about doing that, or even know that they needed one.
Yeah. And there's really these two pieces that we have to separate. One is the overall strategy. There's the sub strategies, and then there's the systems that drive the strategy. These are the pieces that you need, and that's how they're broken down. Otherwise, it cannot work. And what happens and where the confusion comes in is because there's yet another internet marketer with yet another fabulous promise. If we were to only use his or her system in only 4 hours a week, we would be adding easy, without any extra work, $1 million to our bottom line. That is bullshit. So you never believe anybody who says, my system is the only one. You only believe people who are clear that we have to make sure that what I offer has to fit into your idea, and that you are in charge of discriminatorily identifying that resonates, not so much. That's good. I'm not ready. So if somebody comes and says, if you only have a sales page with great copy and it's $25,000, then you need to think about, am I having a client lead generation system that brings enough people in the pipeline? If you don't have enough people that come in the pipeline, you don't need to be hiring a copywriter for $25,000. Then you first need to get your lead generation piece. That's your first strategy. And then if you get the leads, but you're not closing, you still don't need that copywriter. You need to learn how to sell and close. If you have the leads and you're closing, now you can go and get your copywriter and automate these pieces, because then you can hire somebody if the pipeline is full enough as the next strategy to get the sales pipeline figured out, right? So you build this up chronologically, but sales come first.
Yeah. And I think, I think that's sometimes where people worry about, right, is getting that like authority piece or getting that sales piece, because a lot of people say, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to be the old Tupperware lady who's always knocking on the door or whatever. What do you say to people who have sort of that worry?
I think that there's two things we do. So one of the programs that I do, which is probably what I do better than anybody I've ever met, and I say this braggingly because that's just how my brain works, is you need a system. If you are offering your stuff and you say my coaching, my consulting, my planning, my this, you sound like a narcissistic maniac, and all you do is talk about yourself. If you have a system, like I have my 5-star success blueprint, and I have figured out all these pieces of the business, I don't talk about me. I say in growth architecture, and that's why I am the growth architect. We have built a system, and in this system, I can help you to identify where your business is stuck. Once I have that, I can tell you what, if anything, I can do to help you to resolve that. If I didn't have that, my conversation would be, Tanya, so great to talk to you. Here is what I do when I work with my clients. I offer this and this, and then suddenly it's just like, my God, she talks a lot about herself. But if I push this to a third party, I'm not talking about myself. Salesforce only talks about their solution. It's a Salesforce solution. Yeah, somebody designed it, it's theirs, but that's not how they talk about it, right? Nike doesn't talk about, I designed really great shoes that make you really happy. It's like, no, we have a whole technology and a whole system behind this and how we do this. And that's why the product that we design is so good. So you have to really figure out what is that overall system, the umbrella that you offer solutions under. That then takes this fear of sales or sounding salesy, takes it completely out, because then it's no longer about you. Then you say, here's the system, here's what the system does. If that sounds like it's resonating with you, then great, let's move forward. And the second part of what you just said is you actually have to believe in your service or what you offer. If you don't believe that you help people, then that's where you need to start, is on the confidence, and ask yourself why that is, and really work on that mindset piece to overcome that. Because if you have a value, we call this in mindset, it's called a value conflict. And the value conflict is if you say, I am so worth it, and then you go home and you go like, man, I really need to close that job. How am I going to close the job? That's not how you want to think about it. You want to think about, here's somebody who's a phenomenal idea, and I really want to help this person because I believe that I can. Now you don't sell. Now you say, look, this is really going to be good for you. It's going to be a game changer. But if you don't believe that, there's nobody out there convincing you of the opposite.
Well, and I think a lot of times people do that, right? They'll set a price for something and then, they doubt it. They kind of play that little mind game with themselves of like, well, why would somebody pay that much for this service, right? They second guess themselves.
Yes. I think that's also a relatively easy thing to overcome. So the strategy for that would be to say, what are you willing to give to somebody for $1,000? What are you willing to give to somebody for $2,500? What are you willing to give to somebody for $5,000? What are you willing to give to somebody for $10,000? What do you give somebody for $25,000, for $50,000? So if you just sit down with a pen and a paper and say, here's what I'm willing to do for this money, it'll help you with setting a pricing structure in a much better way. Because if you detach these two and say, well, that's $5,000, but you never even thought about it, then there is no backup. I'm working with a woman right now who I wanted to help out. And it turns out it's like one of those things where you want to help out and then it becomes the bottomless pit of somebody who really needs the help. So now I'm putting together a proposal for her to help her in general to make sure that these types of things don't happen to her anymore. And I like her, and she's fabulous. And there's a part of me where I go like, I really don't want to overcharge her, and then think about, okay, what's my time worth? What do I actually charge for my time? And then I go like, here's what my day rate is right now. How much time did I already invest in her stuff? And I wanted to help her, so I'm not charging her for this. But now that we're going to the paid portion, it's like, I already know that I'm going to spend twice as much time with her that I would with probably any other client, just because that's the personality type. And she just needs that kind of care and attention, which she's entitled to. So now I really need to say, this would be my day rate, but for her, I need to double it because I know I need to give her extra effort. And then I'm looking at this number, and it's what, like $13,000. And I'm going like, oh, that's crazy. But then I look at her and I'm going like, man, there's a world-renowned artist who sells her stuff for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I should not feel bad about that. So you have to talk your way through this yourself and really look at the reality of it and say, what is it about this that makes me feel like I cannot charge $13,000 for helping somebody to change something that they've been trying to resolve for decades?
Mm-hmm.
What's the value of that for this woman to feel different in every other negotiation from here on out? That's a $25,000 value. So now suddenly, between the 13 and the 25,000, now suddenly I'm going like, am I charging enough for this? Right? So this is how you have to self-talk your way through this. And then you have to learn how to talk about it in, how are you? Do you want a glass of water? That's $15,000.
Right. Yeah. I think it's having that confidence. And I remember like a few months ago, I had a client that I was dealing with, and I got her to write down everything she ever bought, any course, any books, any education, and everything. And at the end, she was like shocked at the number, because she was over $600,000 that she had spent. And I said, and you're questioning what it is that you're charging? Because really, that's how much it would cost somebody to get to your level, to have your expertise. And even then, everybody thinks, everybody's thought process is different. So they'd never truly be able to get to your sort of expertise. And then all of a sudden, you're right. It doesn't seem, and all of a sudden you're like, maybe that amount is not enough. The one that you thought was too much now becomes not enough.
You're absolutely correct. And this is really the value of the path to get here. We are not in the business of, pardon me, we are not in the business of saying that an hour of my time, it's really the path that got us here. We need to go into the value you provide. So and I was in a Jeff Walker conference, and he had a guy that he brought on stage, and he says, you have to envision somebody with a video camera. So now they're filming you as you're going through the problem, and they see the desperation and and the agony and the staying up for hours and hours and figuring out, what do I say? How do I say it? How do I formulate it? And then the video camera after they've done work with you, where they are now happy and they are in every meeting and every negotiation, and they're slaying it, and they're asking for more money, and the deals are easier, and they're smiling all the time, they're feeling more confident. Now, what's that worth, that transformation to that person? That's the value we provide.
I love that. So tell us a little bit more. You have a thing that you have given out. We'll have the link for it, to find your ideal client in 15 minutes. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because I think sometimes people struggle. You know, we hear all the time, who's your avatar, who's your ideal client? And people are like, and they kind of get stuck. So what can they expect in this?
Yes, so I did the Airtight Avatar because I found that a lot of business owners understand intuitively that really a number of different people can use your product or service. So in my world as a business strategist, you know, I work with people that are in the jewelry business. I've worked with people that are in marketing and sales. I work with people that are developing SaaS. I mean, it's like all over the place. So when you look at the avatar, then you go, well, it's really all kinds of people. And then you design your language, and then your language sounds really wishy-washy. So the language then goes like, come to me and I help you to design the dream business so you can achieve all the goals you ever wanted. That says nothing. So if you were to say, if you are a busy mom with small children who is constantly running around trying to find enough time to grow your business and be a good mom, then this service is right for you, because now you have a very clear positioning. So in the Airtight Avatar, the objective is for you to find out how many avatars you have, and then figure out how do you need to speak to each one of them in their language, because that is critical in how you reach your client or you build your lead generation. So if I go to LinkedIn, I have to have a different language than if I go to Instagram. And if I go to Facebook, I yet have to have another different type of a language. So you cannot be successful unless you know who your avatar is, where these people hang out, because that drives your lead generation strategy, and what solutions that they need. And sometimes I give you another example that really demonstrates this. So when I was coming out of the photography business, you know, I was doing, as a photo biz coach, quite a bit of photography consulting back when I first started this business. And so I had written like a sales page, and it says, if you want to make more money. Now, everybody wants to make more money. However, creatives don't think about it like that. They think about it finding more clients. Now, is there a difference between finding more clients and making more money? Not really, for you and me, because we're consultants. But for them, it just didn't resonate with them, because they're like, I'm not in this to make money. I'm in this to find clients. So can make clients happy. So you have to figure out, and this is what you do in the Airtight Avatar, you have to really figure out what it is that you are addressing for them in their language. And there's actually a second thing that I want to encourage your listeners to go to, and it's I'm launching a quiz, and the quiz is, what's your number one business growth blocker? And it is to be found at growthblockerquiz.com, and it will tell you on which of the pieces that I talked about today is in your path and needs to be first resolved. Because again, I've had so many conversations with amazing hosts like you, where I go, we got to help more people. We got to really help them to figure this out. And while we're at it, little jingle for you, for all of the listeners. You know, Tanya does this as a labor of love. So please be so kind, go and subscribe to the podcast, follow her, give her a 5-star review, and make sure you send her a lovely note thanking her for all the great things she does.
Oh, well, thank you. Now I don't have to say that myself.
Exactly. Isn't that so much better?
Well, I love everything that you said in this episode, because I think, there's a lot of people that are out there that are at that point where they, they're feeling like something needs to change, or something is making them stuck, but they can't quite figure it out for themselves. And I know for myself, one of the hardest things is asking for help. So I think this is a good way for them to sort of dip their toes in, is, to head and to try these things out, the quizzes and stuff that you have, so that they can kind of maybe start shifting their thought on how they're going to get to whatever success looks like for them.
Yes. At the end of the day, you pay with time or money. So you decide what is more valuable to you. The information is all out there. There's no question. If you were to go and listen to a podcast and Google, I mean, you can find out just about anything on the internet if you have the time to do that. Or you find a subject matter expert and you pay for the shortcut. So that's really an individual decision. For me, at this point in my career and in my life, I don't have the time. I have, I rather pay the money than put the time in, because my job as a CEO is to drive this business forward. So now at this point where we are, and you told me, the avatar of your listener is, if you are at that point where you really want to grow, you got to get rid of as much as you possibly can. And the fastest way is find a subject matter expert, learn the strategy, build the system, hand it over to somebody. And then find the next strategy, fine tune the strategy, hand it over to somebody. That's how you grow fast.
I love that. So if someone is sitting here and they're listening and they're just resonating with you, like they're just liking everything that you said and it's connecting with them, where's the best place for them to find you, to connect further with you?
Yes, I mean, you can find me all across social media under my name, Beate Chelette, or The Growth Architect. I always love to hear from the audience. I've said this for years and years and years and years, is seeing the lights come on and somebody saying thank you, or I've heard something that really resonated, really lights me up. That's what I'm doing it for. I'm here to scale impact. And just reach out, send me an email. You can find a contact form on my website. If you want to work with me or evaluate on whether or not I have something that can help you, go to uncoverysession.com, fill that out. Happy to, make 7 of these available to your audience. Just make sure you list the podcast so that I know where you're coming from. And I'm a normal person, just like everybody else. Reach out, say hello, and we'll see if we're a good fit. Happy to help.
Well, thank you so much for your time and everything. We'll make sure that we have all of the links to where people can connect with you, and the, some of the promotions and stuff that you have. We'll have that all on our blog. It was such a pleasure to chat with you and to dig into your brain a little bit. I know I got a lot out of it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to help.
For more information on where you can connect with Beate and her group, head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. You'll see blogs on the left-hand side of the page, this episode, and you're going to be able to discover all the ways that you can connect and work with her. So a few things that we have that are on the horizon that you guys should be watching out for. Again, we have very limited tickets left for our Stop Trading Minutes for Money Mastermind, which is happening on Wednesday, September 21st. There's only a week left of the sale price for the tickets, and then they will be doubling in price. So make sure you head over to get your ticket now. You'll be able to find the link in our show notes. And we also are revamping our website. So you're going to want to watch for that, because it is going to be completely revamped and new. I am so excited to be able to share that with you. We're going to be able to offer even more than what we are right now. So I can't wait for that. So make sure that you stay tuned. And as well, as always, we have a lot of other great guests that are going to be coming on the show. So you're going to want to make sure that you stay tuned. Make sure that you subscribe wherever it is that you like to listen, so that you get all of our latest episode download. And don't forget to head to our YouTube channel. Just look for Fox Talks Business, and you can put faces to everybody's name if you prefer to watch while you listen. So no matter what it is that you're doing today, make sure you take time to have fun, because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?